Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Today's story is about one switch, one light, and a moment that shattered everything. The door creaked open at exactly 2:09 a.m. The hallway was still, the air heavy, like it knew something was coming. She didn't see me, sitting there in the dark. Her footsteps were soft, barefoot. She must have taken her heels off in the car. There was a rustle, a faint giggle under her breath. She didn't know I was home. She didn't know I canceled my weekend trip. She didn't know I saw everything. She walked in like the house was still hers. Like nothing had changed. Like I hadn't seen the photos. Like I hadn't listened to the recording. Like I hadn't watched her, live, on the GPS tracking app one forgot I had installed last year when she lost her phone in a taxi. She stopped in the foyer, breathing lightly, pulling her hair up into a messy bun. I could smell his cologne on her from across the room. Then it happened. She reached for the light. Click. The bulb flickered, then glowed, soft and golden. And that's when she saw me. Her whole body locked in place. No scream. No words. Just wide eyes and trembling lips. I sat still, arms crossed, not blinking. Between us was the kitchen table, now cleared of dinner, replaced with 3 items. Her wedding ring, my spare apartment key, and a note that simply read, "You weren't alone tonight. Neither was I." Her lips parted like she was about to speak. Maybe explain, maybe lie, but the silence won. And that silence said more than she ever could. That's when her phone lit up in her hand, a message from a number she hadn't saved. "You were amazing tonight. He doesn't deserve you." And for a moment, her eyes didn't go to me. They went to the phone. That's when I knew the truth wasn't the part that broke her. It was that I saw it and stayed calm. It was that the man she thought was fragile and harmless had already decided something far worse than anger. And I hadn't even started. She didn't move for a full 10 seconds after the light came on. I swear, it felt like time stopped just to make room for the weight of that silence. Her pupils were wide. Her hand, still hovering over the light switch, was trembling. And for the first time since we met, Daria looked afraid. Not scared of me, no. I could never hurt her, even if I wanted to. But scared of what she couldn't control anymore. Scared of being seen without the carefully crafted mask she wore for years. And right now, that mask had shattered like cheap glass. I stood up slowly, not to intimidate her, but because my knees had gone stiff from sitting motionless for so long. I walked around the table, not saying a word, and picked up the note I had left for her. She stared at it, then at the key, her ring, her past. "I don't understand," she finally whispered, her voice raw. "Why are you just sitting here?" I gave a small shrug, almost pathetically casual. "Because you left the door unlocked." Again. It wasn't the answer she expected. She blinked fast, trying to keep tears from rising. She was always good at crying when it helped her, like clockwork. But this time, they weren't working. Not on me. "Lowell, I didn't mean for this to happen," she started, stepping forward. "It was stupid. It was one night. I was drunk." "I know," I interrupted calmly. "He told me." She froze mid-step. "What?" "The guy," I said, turning toward the living room. "His name's Trevor, right? Mid-30s, drives a black Audi, works in real estate, likes tequila and compliments. Thinks married women are just bored trophies waiting to be polished by someone new." Her face turned pale, like I'd reached into her stomach and ripped out her breath. "You talked to him?" "No," I said. "He talked to you. You just didn't know your smartwatch recorded everything." The entire Uber ride back to his apartment. Every kiss. Every word. Every insult. The look on her face was unforgettable. And I hated that part of me enjoyed it. I hated that I spent years making sure she was happy, waking up early to brew her coffee just right, folding her sweaters the way she liked, canceling plans to be with her when she was sad, only to learn I was background noise in her story. Just a placeholder until someone more exciting walked by. And yet here I was, not yelling, not slamming doors, just giving her space to see herself through my silence. She finally walked past me, not toward me, and into the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of water, though her hands were shaking so hard she spilled half of it across the counter. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" she asked. "Why not confront me when you found out?" I leaned against the wall and looked at her, like a stranger. "Because I wanted you to come home on your own," I said. "I wanted to see how you'd carry the weight of what you did, without knowing if I knew. I wanted to see if you'd lie to my face after crawling out of his bed." Her head dropped, shoulders sunk, and then came her whisper. I was going to tell you. I was going to explain everything. I almost laughed. But instead, I asked the one question that had been chewing through my heart for hours. Was it worth it? She looked up slowly. No defiance. No anger. Just guilt. I don't know, she said quietly. Wrong answer. That was the moment I knew she didn't come home because she regretted it. She came home because she ran out of time. And in that moment, I also knew this wasn't about saving our marriage anymore. This was about showing her who she really was without the script, without the control, without the husband who always played dumb. She wanted a new story. She just got one. She sat down at the kitchen table, right where I used to set her morning coffee every Saturday, just how she liked it. Almond milk, no sugar, 2 ice cubes if it was warm outside. She stared at the ring on the table like it was some alien object, like it wasn't something she used to play with between her fingers during long movies, or tap against the wine glass when she was nervous. Now it just looked like a piece of metal, cold and hollow. I leaned against the hallway doorway, arms crossed. Every minute she stayed silent told me more than any sob story ever could. She wasn't thinking about how to fix us. She was calculating what she could salvage. And I think she finally realized she was already late for that. I need to explain everything, she said, not looking up. Her voice cracked just slightly, like it was rehearsed but still collapsing under the weight of guilt. No, I said calmly. You need to listen. She looked up, surprised, maybe, that I still had more to say. But of course I did. She'd spent the last few months making me feel like an accessory, like someone she could emotionally mute and still rely on to fix the garbage disposal or pick up almond butter from that one overpriced organic store. I pushed off the wall and walked toward the hallway. She hesitated before following me. Her bare feet moved slow over the hardwood, like she was afraid the floor might fall out from beneath her. At the end of the hall, I opened the guest room door. Nothing special inside, just a suitcase on the bed, hers. Half-zipped, clothes folded in a rush, some tags still on them. There was a phone charger, her makeup bag, a pair of sandals she thought she lost months ago, and on the nightstand, a framed photo of the two of us on our 5th anniversary trip to Maine. That photo had been gone for over a year. She told me she accidentally dropped it, and the frame shattered. She'd get a new one, she said. But she never did. I packed this yesterday, I said, not turning to face her. Just in case you didn't turn around before the damage was done. She walked in slowly, barely breathing. She stood next to the bed and reached out to touch the suitcase, like it might burn her. Then she turned to the photo, and I saw it. That exact moment. That tiny flicker of her remembering what she used to feel. Or at least pretending she did. You want me to leave? She whispered. I don't want anything from you anymore, I replied. But I do want you to know what it feels like to walk into a room where nothing is yours anymore. She turned toward me sharply, face flushing with sudden frustration. So what? This is revenge. You're punishing me? No, I said. Punishment would have been telling your parents. Or forwarding that voice memo to your boss. Or posting the screenshots online like people do when they're feeling petty and broken. This isn't revenge, Daria. This is recognition. I finally recognize who you are. She sat down on the edge of the bed, stunned. She didn't cry, and I think that hurt more than anything. Not because I needed her tears, but because I knew she was saving them for someone else. I made a mistake, she said. People make mistakes. Right, I nodded. But most people don't defend their mistakes while still holding the match they lit the fire with. She stood up, walked to the window, and stared out into the empty street. The silence between us felt like glass, thin, sharp, dangerous. Finally, she turned and looked at me. So what happens now? She asked. That depends on what you do next, I said. She tilted her head, meaning. I handed her a small envelope. Inside was a printed email thread. Her email, her words, her plan to meet him again next weekend while I was out of town. Because this night, wasn't a one-time thing. It was a routine, and she just didn't realize I'd learned the steps. She stood in front of me, holding that email printout like it was a live wire. I could tell the gears in her head were spinning fast, trying to calculate the damage, figure out how much I knew, and how much I might be bluffing. But I wasn't bluffing. Not even a little. That thread wasn't a lucky guess. It came from the second email account she thought I didn't know about. The one she made when we were going through a rough patch last spring. She said she needed space, so she created an inbox where I wasn't invited. I only found it because she forgot to log out one day on the shared iPad. and I didn't say a word when I saw it. I just waited. She flipped through the printed emails in silence, her fingertips shaking as she skimmed phrases like, "I can't stop thinking about that night. And he still has no clue. I'm serious. We can pull this off." I stood there watching her break, not with cruelty, but with exhaustion. A kind of heartbreak that doesn't even make you angry anymore. It just makes you tired. "You were going to leave next weekend, weren't you?" I asked. "Tell me, was it going to be another girls' trip? Or were you going to lie to my face again while hugging me goodbye?" Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then she caught herself, straightened her spine, and said, "I don't owe you an explanation after the way you've been spying on me." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because her defense was just so perfectly twisted. Like I was the bad guy for reading the words she wrote to the man she was cheating with. "You're right," I said. "You don't owe me anything. That ended when you walked out the first time and gave someone else what you used to save for me." Daria tried to deflect. She always did. "You think you've been perfect? You think you've been this amazing husband who never made me feel invisible?" I didn't flinch. "No. I think I've been a flawed man who still treated you like you mattered, even when I didn't." And just like that, she shut up. The silence grew thick again. Then there was a knock at the front door. We both froze. It was 3:02 a.m. She looked at me like she thought I was setting her up. I looked at her like maybe the universe had finally decided to turn the lights on for both of us. "I didn't call anyone," I said. "Did you?" She shook her head. I walked down the hallway and opened the front door just a few inches. And standing there, awkward and fidgety, was someone I hadn't seen in years. His name was Shane. He used to be one of Daria's classmates back in her grad school days. He was the kind of guy who laughed too loud and complimented too often. I always had a weird gut feeling about him, but I was too insecure to challenge it. He moved out of state, disappeared, and I never gave him another thought. Until now. "Hey," he said softly. "Sorry it's late. I didn't know where else to go." "What do you want?" I asked, not hiding my confusion. His eyes darted behind me. "Is she here?" Daria suddenly appeared behind me, and when she saw him, her whole body locked up. "Shane?" she whispered. "I didn't know," he said, stepping back a little. "I swear I didn't know he was you." Now it was my turn to freeze. "What are you talking about?" I asked. He swallowed hard and looked me in the eyes. "I didn't know you were the husband. I wouldn't have. Look, I need to explain something." I opened the door fully and stepped aside. Daria didn't say a word. She just stood there like her world had been ripped open twice in one night. Shane walked in and sat down on the couch like it was a confessional. And what he said next would change everything I thought I knew about my wife and her one-night stand. Shane sat forward on the couch, elbows resting on his knees, hands nervously twisting the corner of his jacket. I stayed standing, arms folded, every nerve in my body bracing for whatever was about to come out of his mouth. Daria stood behind me, frozen like a shadow, not moving, not breathing, just staring at this man as if he'd crawled out of a sealed part of her past she never expected to face again. "I didn't plan any of this," he began, his voice low, hoarse, eyes flickering between us. "I wasn't even supposed to be in the city this month. But a few weeks ago, I got an email. No name, just an address and a time. At first I thought it was spam, but curiosity got the better of me." I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. I could hear Daria behind me shifting her weight from one foot to the other, the quiet creak of the floor under her toes sounding louder than the air between us. Shane rubbed his palms together. When I showed up to the lounge, she was already there, dressed like it was prom night. It took me a minute to recognize her, but when I did, he shook his head. She smiled like it was no big deal, like we just saw each other last week. And before I could ask why me, or what the hell this was, she was pulling me toward the bar. He looked up at me now. "Lowell, I swear to you, I didn't know she was married. She said she was recently divorced. She even told me you cheated, that you abandoned her emotionally, and she was just trying to feel wanted again." A sudden tightness squeezed my chest, but I stayed still. Daria finally spoke, her voice cracked and brittle. "You weren't supposed to show up here, Shane. Why did you come?" "Because I couldn't sleep," he said quickly. "Because after I got home tonight and put everything together, your name, your voice, the photos in your apartment, I realized who you were really talking about. Him. And that whole thing tonight, that wasn't about fun. That was about revenge." He looked back at me. "Lowell, She wasn't cheating because she was falling in love with someone else. She was trying to punish you for something you didn't even do. I turned to her. Is that true? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He answered for her. She told me. Shane said. She said she was testing you. That she wanted to see if you'd notice. If you'd fight for her. If you'd wake up. That if you did find out, it would mean you still cared. And if you didn't, well, that would justify everything she did next. I took a deep breath and looked at Daria. Is that really what this was to you? A test? A sick little game to see how far you could push before I snapped? Tears were finally in her eyes. But I didn't know if they were real or just another manipulation tactic. She'd been silent for too long. I gave her the floor, and she'd spent the night trying to fill it with lies and excuses. I didn't know it would go this far, she whispered. I didn't expect it to feel like this. I didn't feel seen anymore. You were always so calm, so predictable. I wanted chaos. I wanted to feel alive again. Then you should have gone skydiving, I snapped. Not opened up our marriage like a trash bag and dumped everything into the street. Shane stood up, clearly uncomfortable. I shouldn't be here. This is your mess, not mine. No, I said, stopping him. You didn't know, but you're part of it now. And you brought clarity into something she tried to keep cloudy. So thank you for confirming what I already feared. He nodded, looked at Daria once more, and left. As the door shut behind him, I didn't say a word. I walked past Daria into our bedroom and opened the closet. From the back corner, I pulled out the manila envelope I had been holding on to for over a month. The one with the divorce papers I never had the courage to sign. I placed them on the bed and walked out. I didn't even have to say anything. She saw them, and her knees nearly buckled. But she wasn't the only one who'd fall that night. Because what she didn't know yet was that Shane wasn't the only man who showed up unexpectedly. She didn't touch the divorce papers. Not right away. She stood in the doorway like the bed was a cliff, and stepping closer would send her over the edge. Her eyes darted between the envelope and me, searching for some hint that I was bluffing, that this was just a scare tactic. But I wasn't bluffing, and I wasn't scared. I was done. She followed me into the hallway, finally finding her voice again, but now it sounded brittle, desperate, too late. Lol, can we talk about this like adults? Just stop with the drama and sit down. I turned to her slowly, studying her face, how quickly she could shift from tears to indignation. This isn't drama, I said. This is cleanup. I walked past her and into my office, the one room she never bothered with. She always said it felt cold in there. Now I knew it just felt honest. Real. Like a place that wasn't pretending. On the desk sat my old hard drive, the one I used to back up everything before the cloud made things simple. I'd plugged it in the day after I saw that text pop up on her smartwatch. I didn't know what I was looking for then. But a week ago, I found it. A voice message. Not recent. From 6 months ago. A voicemail I had never heard. Left accidentally on our landline by someone who didn't realize it had picked up after the beep. It was her. And it wasn't the words that crushed me. It was the tone. She was laughing. Drunk. Talking to someone. A man. Who wasn't speaking loud enough for the mic to catch. But her side of the conversation was crystal clear. I swear, it's like living with furniture. You bump into it, and it just apologizes. Laughter. He doesn't even touch me anymore. I mean, he tries, but I just close my eyes and think about anything else. The worst part? He thinks we're fine. More laughter. If I ever leave, I doubt he'd even fight for me. He'd just nod and ask if I need help packing. And then, almost whispering, maybe that's what I want. I played the recording now, out loud, as she stood frozen in the doorway of my office. Her face drained of color again, just like when the light flipped on in the hallway earlier that night. You left this on the machine, I said. You must have hit the wrong button after one of your fake late work nights. You never even noticed. But I did. Last week. And I've been listening to it every day since. She stepped forward slowly, hand to her mouth. I don't remember saying that. I looked at her, not with hatred, but with a strange kind of pity. That's the problem, Daria. You don't remember what you say because none of it means anything to you. Words are just decorations, tools to bend the world into the shape you want. She tried again, reaching for the one thread she hadn't tugged yet. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. I was venting. Every couple goes through this. Stop, I said, raising a hand. Stop making this normal. Stop pretending that this is just a blip in a marriage. This isn't a phase. This is who you are when you think I'm not listening. And now I know. I was never supposed to be listening in the first place. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there and started to crack, like glass under too much weight. And then she turned and walked out of the room, like she couldn't stand to hear herself anymore. I followed her only to the hallway. I didn't say another word. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because she told me to, but because I needed distance. Not physical, emotional. And for the first time in 9 years, I didn't wonder if she'd join me in the morning. But what I didn't expect was the knock at the door at sunrise. This time, it wasn't Shane. This time, it was the person who sent the anonymous email that started everything. And they were about to tell me what Daria never had the courage to admit. It was barely past 6 when the knock came. Not loud, not urgent, just 3 steady taps, almost polite, like the kind of knock you'd expect from someone who knew exactly what they were about to do, but didn't want to cause a scene doing it. I was already awake. I hadn't slept more than 20 minutes, if at all. I lay on the couch in the same clothes from the night before, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it spin like the seconds of a life I didn't recognize anymore. Daria was still in the bedroom. The door was closed. I hadn't seen her since the voicemail played. She didn't come out. She didn't apologize again. She didn't cry, scream, beg. Nothing. It was almost worse than a fight. This quiet, mutual acknowledgement that the script was over. I sat up slowly, my legs stiff, head pounding from exhaustion and emotion. The knock came again, softer this time. I opened the door, and I froze. Standing on my porch was someone I hadn't seen in almost 4 years. My sister, Elise. Now, before you think this is some cliché twist, it's not. Elise and Daria were never close. They tolerated each other for my sake, but there was always tension. Elise was the only one in my family who questioned Daria from the start, and I, like a loyal, blind husband, always defended her. Elise had moved across the country years ago. We hadn't spoken in almost 6 months. And now, here she was, holding a to-go coffee and a manila envelope of her own. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I stepped aside without a word. She walked in, looked around, and gave a faint nod. "Still smells like cinnamon and quiet denial in here," she said. That was her way of saying she could tell I was still trying to pretend everything was fine. I gestured to the kitchen, and we sat. She placed the envelope on the table between us and slid it toward me. "I didn't know how else to do this," she said. "I tried to stay out of your marriage. I really did. But then I saw her." I furrowed my brow. "Saw her?" Elise nodded. 3 weeks ago, at a restaurant in Willow Point. She was at a table in the corner with some guy. Tall, brown jacket, silver watch. I thought, maybe it's a work thing. But then she kissed him, and not like someone trying to hide it. My stomach twisted. Willow Point was 30 miles from here. Daria said she had a conference call from home that day. I remember because I canceled my gym plans so I could make lunch for her between her meetings. I followed them, Elise continued. "Yeah, I know how that sounds. But I couldn't let it go. Not when I saw the way she looked at him. So I waited outside, watched them get into his car. I took pictures. Then I found out who he was. Checked her social media, LinkedIn, all of it. And when I was sure, I sent the anonymous email. Everything started spinning. The tip-off, the messages, the screenshots. The reason I even thought to check her smartwatch again. You're the reason this started unraveling," I whispered. Elise didn't smile. She didn't look smug. She just looked sad. "You're my brother, Lowell," she said. "I may have hated the way she treated you, but I wasn't going to destroy your life unless I was absolutely certain she already had." I opened the envelope. Inside were printed screenshots, photos from her surveillance, a receipt from the restaurant, even a map with pins showing where Daria's car had been, thanks to a tracking app Elise used to use when she ran a local security firm. It was all there. Everything I needed to shut the door on this story, but also everything I needed to see how deep the betrayal really went. I sat back and exhaled slowly. "She told me it was just one night," I said. Elise shook her head. "It wasn't. She's been seeing him for months." The truth landed like a hammer, but it didn't break me. Because this time, I was prepared. I had been bracing myself for the worst, and I finally got it. Daria still hadn't come out of the bedroom. She probably heard Elise's voice by now. She probably knew it was over. But I didn't go to her. I didn't call her out. I just sat with the truth, with my sister, and finally let go of the version of myself that kept asking, what did I do wrong? It wasn't me. It was her. For so long, I believed that maybe I wasn't passionate enough, wasn't exciting enough, wasn't alpha enough to keep her attention. But in reality, I was just too steady for someone who needed chaos to feel alive. And that wasn't love. It was addiction. And I wasn't her cure. I was her mirror. That evening, I packed a bag. Not hers, mine. Not out of weakness, but because I didn't want to breathe her air anymore. I didn't want to see the couch where she sat texting him while pretending to be tired. I didn't want to sleep in the bed where she'd fantasized about being anywhere else. But before I left, I wrote one final note. I left it on the kitchen table, next to the envelope Elise brought. It said, "I was never furniture. You just forgot how to look at me." I drove for hours without a destination. No music, no phone calls, just the road and my thoughts. And for the first time in months, those thoughts weren't screaming at me. They were quiet. Heavy, yes, but calm. I pulled over just before sunset, somewhere near Lake Winderley, and sat on a bench overlooking the water. That lake had been our spot once, mine and Daria's, back when we still held hands in public and actually talked without needing a reason. But now it was just mine again. And strangely, that felt okay. I checked my phone once. She hadn't called, hadn't texted, no dramatic message, no apology, nothing. And honestly, that silence felt like peace. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. Or maybe she was still trying to spin the truth into a version she could live with. Either way, I was done carrying her guilt like it was mine. I spent the next few days at Elise's. She gave me space, but also made me laugh when I needed it. She even made pancakes one morning and left a note that said, "You're not broken. You're just rebooting." Classic Elise. The divorce, when it happened, was clean. No screaming, no drawn-out courtroom drama. She signed the papers. I signed them too. And with that, it was over. But the healing? That took time. Some nights were brutal. I'd replay everything. The laughter, the lies, the voicemail, and wonder if I'd ever fully trust again. But slowly, the grief made room for gratitude. Because as much as her betrayal hurt, it woke me up. I realized how long I'd lived as a ghost in my own marriage, apologizing for being steady, soft-spoken, boring, as she once put it. Now I know, quiet doesn't mean weak. Calm doesn't mean blind. And kindness should never be mistaken for stupidity. I started hiking again, reading, even signed up for a cooking class. I met new people, real people, and found comfort in simple, unfiltered conversations. I rediscovered myself, piece by piece, without needing someone else to define my worth. And you know what? I'm happier now than I ever was during those last years of pretending. I don't hate Daria. I don't even wish her harm. I just wish she finds whatever version of herself she was looking for in other people. Because the one I loved, the one I married, she disappeared a long time ago. And me? I'm still here. Still healing. Still standing. But finally, I feel like I'm walking forward. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. I know it's been a wild ride, betrayal, lies, and hard truths. But if there's one thing I hope you take away from it, it's this. Losing someone who didn't value you isn't failure, it's freedom. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever uncovered a betrayal in a way you never expected? What did you do afterward? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. And if you found this story moving, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one here on Reddit Confessions. See you in the next chapter.